Hello and welcome to Whisky.com, where fine spirits meet. And we have a 360-degree video, so you can actually move around with your mouse and your mobile phone, guys. You can actually look in all the directions and you can see where I am, and you see it is pretty bad weather. It just stopped raining, so I don't have any rain in my face. Still pretty windy and actually really cold. Yeah. Today I'm here, as you can read, at the Dalwhinnie Distillery. Dalwhinnie Distillery is located in the Highlands and is it's famous for their really nice single malt whiskey. The distillery was built in 1897, and in 1898 it was sold, and the new proprietors actually built these pagoda tops onto their drying floors, and they are really iconic for the Dalwhinnie Distillery, as they have them on all the bottles and they just look really nice. In 1934 something really terrible happened, and that is someone knocked over a lamp. Sounds pretty easy, but back in the days they were paraffin lamps, and they actually caught fire. The whole distillery caught fire and burned to the ground. In 1938, the distillery was rebuilt and resumed production. Today, we're gonna find out all the specialties about the distillery single malt whiskey. So, come on with me and find out. So, we start at the... So this is the start of the production at the Dalwhinnie Distillery. And every good whiskey production starts with the ingredients. The main ingredients, malt and water, are shown here in this room. The water for the Dalwhinnie Distillery actually comes up from a river up north. It's called the Alt am Sluik, and the river is being fed by a loch called the Green Lochen. The loch is actually not in the hand of the distillery, so they have a contract with a landlord, and that contract says the distillery gives the landlord 60 bottles of Dalwhinnie 15-year-old, and therefore the distillery can have all the water they need for their production. The second ingredient, the malt. You can see behind me some sorts of assortment of malts. Comes from the Aberdeenshire, where the barley is being grown and then processed in a big malting facility and supplied here regularly by truck. The distillery uses only unpeated malt because the character of the Dalwhinnie is just an unpeated, pleasant whiskey. Yeah, the actually milling process is somewhere off-site that we can't show, but the distillery uses a bobby mill. This here behind me is also a bobby mill. Very similar to it, but this mill is very old, and the distillery actually does not know where this comes from, so it's kind of a mystery mill. Yeah, so this is how the barley is treated, as it is grinded down in the mill to a grist, and now we follow up to the mashing process. So now we're here at the mashing. What happens here is you have the grist going in with the conveyor, shooting down into the stainless steel lauter tun. The distillery uses 7 tons of grist and sprinkles on the water, and they use actually 60,000 liters of water per run. They use water at 80 degrees centigrade, which is really hot, and then they let it stay in there for 8 hours, and the water dissolves the sugar and the starches inside the grist. So you're left with a really sugary, floury substance, and 43,000 liters of that is pumped into the next stage for fermentation. The rest of the water is actually pumped into a separate tank, and that separate tank is a recycling tank that is used in the next stage. So what they sprinkle on it is not actually just water, but water together with the stuff from the last run. After they've pumped out the rest, they are left with the draft. This here is the draft. Draft is a substance that is really high in protein, that is very perfect for the cattle industry. Once it is dried and pressed into these little cubes or tubes, then they ship it off to local farmers and they use it for their cattle, as in growing cattle. And that's one of the reasons why Scotland has such great beef, because they use the quality substance from the whiskey industry. But we now follow the wort into the next stage of the fermentation. Here in the fermentation, if you look around the room, you see that the Dalwhinnie Distillery has 6 washbacks. They each hold 34,000 liters of the wort that's coming in. That's about a filling to about where my foot are, about to the ground floor. And the rest is about empty space for the foam that is actually forming when you have fermentation, and just a bit of safety room so it doesn't bubble over. The blades here on top, the motors, turn the blades, and that is actually cutting down the foam so it doesn't bubble over. What is really special about the distillery is they have these wooden fermenters. And the wooden fermenters are made of massive wood. And this massive wood is a very special kind of wood. It is actually Siberian larch. I never heard of any fermenters made of Siberian larch. Actually, just 5 of them are made of Siberian larch, as these are really old. They are 40 years old now. This one here is actually not made of Siberian larch. This is a bit different, a bit lighter, as you can see, and it is made of Oregon pine. And only 15 years of age. And what they do here at Dalwhinnie is they're looking out for a very fruity character. So the fermentation time is about 60 hours, which is pretty long. So they want to have these the wort and the yeast forming a very fruity character. And this is done by actually the wood and the long duration. This here is about half done. And when you smell it, you do smell it's a bit sharp, but mostly has a bread flavor, a flour flavor, wheat, and still a bit of a yeast character, all very damp. When you smell one of the nearly finished or finished tanks, you do have a very fruity character, bit of a acidic flavor, bit of an apple taste. So this is really, the people here say it has kind of an apple cider flavor to it. So this very fruity character is actually what the people of the Dalwhinnie Distillery are looking for, to have this nice fruity flavor that ends up in the distillery character of Dalwhinnie. You will always have in Dalwhinnie that little bit of fruity character from the fermentation. And this is where it all happens. After that, we have a 9% wort or beer, a wash or beer, and that is then pumped to the distillation. We're here in the still room. Look around, you will find 2 beautiful stills. Let's focus on the first one. The first one is the wash still. You can always spot the wash still by looking at the neck, and you always find a watch glass. The watch glass is very important because you can see how high the beer inside is actually bubbling. You never want to have the beer bubbling over, because you could get solid pieces into your system. It could clog up and then build up pressure, and that is really dangerous. So, the very special thing about the Dalwhinnie Distillery is that you have a warm tub. The warm tub is actually located outside the building, so you can see the line arm is going outside. The warm tub is actually a huge wooden tub filled with fresh spring water. And then you have a tube, a copper tube, going in the warm tub in a spiral downwards. It's 100-meter long, and this gives the spirit time to have contact with the copper catalytic reactions going on, and it makes the whiskey less sharp, and therefore it has a really nice whiskey character. So yeah, the copper is really important for the whiskey. As you can see down there, in that in that brass thing, you have the flow of spirit going on the very left side. The very left side is the wash still. So this wash still is actually running, and I can feel the heat. What the people call it here, the stuff that is coming out the wash still, they call it the low wines, and it is filled into the low wines receiver. The low wines have about 22% ABV and are then pumped into the charger, and the charger is actually pumped into the spirit still. The spirit still is very important. The spirit still is very important for the character of the whiskey. The shape of the spirit still is very, very important. It's a bit thinner, but also a bit taller. Yeah, it has a capacity of 16,000 liters, and if you look at it, it has a pear shape. So there's no reflux bowl, no constricting piece. That means you have a straightforward distillation. The time for the distillation, the speed, is you have about 20 minutes of 4 shots, and then you have about 4 to 5 hours of hard piece, which gives you a rough estimate of 56-57% ABV of your finished product. 4 to 5 hours is medium to fast, so you get a bit of, if you distill faster and more straightforward, then you have a bit of more of a spicy character, a bit more rough character, and that's what the people at the Dalwhinnie Distillery call the fireworks. So you have a bit of a firework going on in your whiskey. That's what the people like here. And then it also goes out into the warm tub, a 100-meter long spiral through fresh spring water. And here we have a bit of a problem with the warm tub. The warm tub has different temperatures in winter as it has in summer. So the condensation during the winter is going a bit faster, and that means you have a bit of more firework going on. And this is what the people at the distillery use for their winter gold whiskey. So the winter gold whiskey has a bit more spiciness to it. Yeah. Let's talk more about the stills. The stills used to have a coal firing below them, so they were direct fired, but that really has gone out of fashion because it's really hard to not have anything burning at the bottom. So nowadays you do steam, and there are steam coils in it, and that's how they heat up the spirits in their stills. Yeah. After that, we have a finished product of 56-57% ABV, and that goes pretty much straight forward into the cask. And we see the casks inside the warehouse. And now I come to my favorite part of the distillery, the warehouse. Oh, it smells of whiskey, oak. It's a bit damp, but also it's really cold in here. And that's because we are so high up in the Highlands. The Dalwhinnie Distillery is the highest distillery in Scotland. They had it measured, and there is actually a plate at the back of the distillery, and that is actually wrong. They had it measured again, and now they are again the highest distillery in Scotland. And what comes with that is that it's really, really cold. The town of Dalwhinnie, right next to it, is the coldest town in Scotland, and also therefore the whole of Great Britain. The average temperature is about 6 degrees centigrade all over the year. It goes down to -10 and up to about 20 degrees centigrade. So really not that warm. And yeah, what that does to the spirit is it matures it really slowly, soft, because the staves are actually not breathing that much. More and less temperature lets that expand and compress, so the whiskey gets into the stave and out of the stave again, and that's not that much here up in that cold weather. Also, less evaporation. So you have a slow maturing spirit, not that much influenced with high cask character, but more of the spirit character from the distillery. Yeah, most of the casks that you see in here are bourbon hogsheads. They come here in form of stave from the United States, are being raised again, so made into a barrel. And usually the Americans have 200 liters, 52 gallons is the American standard barrel. These build them a bit bigger, so you have about 250 liters of whiskey stored in there. And during the time of maturation, the distillery loses about 25% of the whiskey. That is a bit unusual because usually you lose about 30%. But as it is colder, you have less evaporation, so you have more for the people and less for the angels. And yeah, the spirit is distilled at 67% ABV and about filled at about this strength. And during the maturation, it falls down to 57. Yeah, different products. We have the normal 15 years in the cask, that is the 15 years Dalwhinnie. Then we have the Distiller's Edition. The Distiller's Edition is a normal 15-year-old, and then they fill it into sherry, Spanish sherry oak casks, which are bigger, and they have that fruity sherry character still inside the staves. So this is added to the whiskey, and you find it inside the whiskey, and the Distiller's Edition is therefore just a bit more premium, a bit more fruity, a bit more intense. Yeah. The last product, I've talked about the Winter's Gold already during the distillation, is also matured in the bourbon hoggies and also the sherry oak casks separately and then mixed in the end. Yeah. That's all about the distillery. Now we have an interview with Neil Murphy. And stay tuned, I'm gonna ask him a few questions and we're also gonna try the whiskies. Yeah, I'm standing here with Neil Murphy. You have 20 years of experience with Diageo and you're now Senior Site Manager at Dalwhinnie. So thank you very much for having us.
You're welcome.
So what does a Senior Site Manager do?
So I'm responsible for 3 of our malt distilleries actually, Dalwhinnie, Blair Athol and Royal McGar. So I look after the operations, distillery operations, and also the visitor centres.
Okay, yeah, 20 years at Dalwhinnie. You have never done anything before, Ed?
So yeah, 28 years actually with Diageo. I've been in my current role as Senior Site Manager for 2 years. Previous to that, I spent a number of years in grain distilling and various other roles.
Nice. So, Dalwhinnie, you have a bit of a close standard range. What are we having today?
So we've got our standard 15-year-old single malt. We've also got our Distiller's Edition, and we've got our Winter's Gold.
Okay, let's just start with the 15 then. So I've talked about a bit about that in the warehouse. 15 years in bourbon hogsheads?
Yes.
Oh, nice. It's fruity. It's bit of vanilla in there, bit of honey.
Yeah, definitely honey.
Bit of heather again,
yeah.
Also. Oh, nice. Yeah, cheers.
Cheers.
Oh, nice balance. Nice balance between the fruity character, bit of apples, bit of and a bit of a flowery note as well.
Yeah.
A bit of heather. Also, quite a good amount of oak though.
Yeah. Yeah. Good balance between them.
Yeah, it's a nice balanced whiskey. So the Dalwhinnie, is that pronounced right?
Sure.
What does that stand for? What's this Dalwhinnie mean?
So it stands for the meeting place. So historically, when farmers were driving their cattle down to the central belt of Scotland to market, various routes from the Highlands gathered would feed into what was Dalwhinnie.
Okay, so Dalwhinnie was built right at the centre of the Highlands then? Or?
Sure. sure. Yeah, it's where the roads, the different roads from the north meet.
Ah,
That's
okay.
why it's called the meeting place.
The meeting place. Oh, interesting. Interesting. Nice. Yeah. And you're quite high up here, right?
We are.
really
Really the highest distillery in Scotland. We have an average temperature year round of around about 6.5 degrees,
Okay.
which gives us plenty of cold water for our to help us make the character of spirit that we make at Dalwhinnie.
Nice, nice. So yeah, what else do we have?
So we've got the Distiller's Edition. So the Distiller's Edition is our Dalwhinnie, but double matured, so it's finished in a sherry cask, just to give it something different, that's sweet sherry cask.
So the sherry cask, is that European oak casks?
Yes.
So
yeah.
can we expect, is it heavier, more bitter, or what can we expect from it?
You can get the sweetness from the sherry cask. With the fruit type flavours.
Oh. So it's also 43% ABV?
Yes.
It's oh yeah, it's more of a dried fruit character, bit of a what is it that is
So there's still that urban cask influence, the kind of vanilla notes.
yeah, you do have the sweetness from the bourbon cask, you do have a bit of a caramel vanilla thing going on, but also the what is that? I think it's berries or cherries or something like that. Together with a bit of a dried plum note.
Yeah.
That's really, really nice. That's actually really cream or oily. Really oily in there. Oh, and just a beautiful, nice, dark sherry note in there. So that's Oloroso sherry cask?
Also, yes.
Ah, okay, nice. So you're the highest distillery in Scotland.
Yep.
So 350 meters, I think,
Yep.
1,000.
Yeah, it's
100 something
1,500
feet.
Yeah. roughly.
Yeah. So do you ever trouble with deliveries with the snow and everything?
We're quite fortunate that we tend to not be impacted too much. The local authorities do a great job of keeping the road open as much as they can. So in heavy snowfall, the road on the Dalwhinnie Pass can be closed for periods of time. But yeah, as soon as the snow lets up, the ploughs are out and clearing the road and lets us get our deliveries.
So the other thing is, you have a warm tub outside with the.
Sure.
Is there any trouble with freezing or something like that?
No, we obviously will drain the warm tub down if we're closed for any period of time over the winter. But yeah, because we're running, most of the time the water's flowing, so it doesn't get a chance to freeze.
Oh, okay. So, but is the warm tub, is that low maintenance? Because I think I've seen one in Ireland or somewhere, but
Yeah, no,
never seen these
there are
things.
still a few distilleries operating warm tubs in Scotland. We changed our warm tubs for condensers around 30 years ago, and it actually completely changed the character of the spirit. So yeah, it made basically what we ended up with was a much lighter character spirit, which was very different from the Dalwhinnie that you would know. And we've actually created a 25-year-old special release, which was a spirit distilled in the time that the condensers were in place.
So did you then retrofit it?
We went back, we put worms back in, yeah.
So then
went back to the traditional.
So you're really known for a kind of a Highland, a bit rougher and a bit, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we produce what you would call a sulphury spirit.
Sulphurous.
But the sulphury notes in the new make spirit actually disappear through the maturation period. So the end result is actually quite a light spirit.
Yeah, I've seen a bit when I had the raw spirit, and yeah, you do have a bit of what you said, a firework in there.
Sure, yeah,
Really
spent
love
matches type sulfury,
That's-
which comes from really inhibiting the amount of interaction with the copper. So the cold water that we use from the dam that we get our water from allows us to condense the whiskey vapours really quickly to limit the amount of copper interaction, and that's what leaves that sulfury character in the spirit.
Okay, especially during the winter time, right?
Yeah, especially
So,
during the winter time.
It's called here. We have the last one, the Winter's Gold.
Sure. So this is a flavour-led Dalwhinnie, and basically we select the spirit that has been distilled during the coldest months between October and March. So where the worm tubs are operating at the coldest, the vapour is really condensing very quickly. So that sulfury character is even more emphasised in the new make spirit.
Okay, so it's a bit more forward and a bit more. It's almost, there's a bit of a remembrance. I would even call it a bit smoky or phenolic or something like that. I'm not sure. But also flowery, heather, and definitely that honey sweetness also going on in there. So this is a mixture of casks. Do you tell what kind of mixture you have?
No, we would just do, as I say, it's flavour led, so really it's down to our blenders to select,
Okay.
the range of casks that give it its character.
Okay, so cheers.
So a bit more spicy, sharper finish.
Whoa. First I want to say, hey, that's lighter, not spicy, but when you have it in your mouth, first of all, it feels like a light character, very fluid. But then when you swallow it, you do realize, oh, there's something behind that. And then you get the spicy. It's almost like a little bit of a rye flavor, like a bit of a spicy bread, maybe a bit of oriental spices. Oh, I like it. I do like it. Okay, so what are the plans for the future, and what else? What products do you also have at Dalwhinnie?
So yeah, plans for the future are really continuing to produce the fantastic spirit that goes into our Dalwhinnie single malts. Visitor centre is visitor centres for the Scotch industry are massive at the moment. Visitor numbers continue to grow year on year, and anyone who's planning a visit to our visitor centres at Dalwhinnie here, we also have a distillery exclusive bottling, which is only available. It's called Lizzie's Dram.
Isn't it that
So
Lizzie's Dram, yeah.
So Lizzie's Dram. So Lizzie was actually the first female operator at Dalwhinnie Distillery, and she retired in February this year. So we dedicated our distillery exclusive bottling to her.
48% ABV.
Yeah.
She was quite a.
So and only available here in the visitor centre.
Nice. So yeah, we've shown you around the distillery. It's really a nice place, and it's very beautiful, and the mountain, the view around you is just beautiful. So how many people do you get per year?
So currently we're receiving around 54,000 visitors a year.
Nice.
And continuing year on year, the numbers seem to keep growing. So yeah, hopefully that's a continuing trend.
Okay, yeah. So I highly encourage everyone to find the distillery if you ever come to Scotland. It's kind of you have to pass through here,
You
right?
have to, if you're going north,
So,
pretty much, you're one road.
You should definitely take a stop here. So So thank you very much for the interview. And if you want to buy any whiskies, if you live in Germany, then you will find them on Whisky.de. So take a look, and thank you very much, and see you next time.
Thanks very much. You're welcome.